What's up, everyone? Friedemann Findeisen here from Holistic Songwriting, and welcome to the Artist Series, the biggest show in the world. The show where we look at the biggest artists in the world. That's what I was going to say. Today we're looking at Slipknot's Unsainted, their first single off of their new album, We Are Not Your Kind. First song off of the new album means, in Slipknot language, that we have to see new masks. And that's what we're getting here. A lot of the band members here are introduced now with masks, and they seem to have dropped their jumpsuits and gone for a more like hooded, cloaked kind of look. I mean, the whole video has all these religious undertones, or, sects, or, Illuminati, that kind of underground religious overtones, but then the dark side of that. That's kind of what they're playing with here. And also the logo that they're using is the 9-pointed star. The music reflects that as well. Like in the lyrics, we hear being talked about martyrs and saints and stuff like that. So it's a very clear theme that they're setting here. So that brings us to image. Let's talk about the 3 words, folks. So take a bit of time, stop the video now, and think about your 3 words, then come back to me. All right, welcome back. Let's talk about your 3 words. So the 3 words that I have are, number 1, beastly, number 2, chaotic, and number 3, violent. Beastly because of the masks and because of the way they perform on stage, and because the way they portray themselves is not as humans, but as these, it seems like they're animals. Chaotic because their arrangements are really quite chaotic. It's all over the place. There's a lot of notes and a lot of stuff happening, and once the song is over, we're like, what just happened, right? It just kind of blows us away by how much stuff is going on. And the speed of it, the amount of notes the drummer plays, especially with the kick drum, there's just a lot of stuff going on. And lastly, violent. I mean, you see that in a lot of their music videos. They're playing with a lot of horror tropes there as well, especially the gore. Let's take a look at the music video together and talk about this song. First of all, something that I think is really quite funny is last week I did an analysis of Crazy by Gnarls Barkley. And this song has the exact same chord progression, just a half step lower. So we're in B minor instead of C minor, but we're still in, it's a 1 flat 3 major, flat 6 major, and 5 major. I want to say major. Yes, the guitar plays an A sharp at some point. Yes, so that is a 5 major there as well. So it's a dominant instead of just the 5 minor. Okay, so it's the same chord progression. Harmonically, pretty much the same thing. I mean, here they're just playing one chord per measure. For me, this and Crazy aren't so far apart. Like it's the same thing. It's the same kind of chords. It's the same type of melodies typically. There's not that many differences. The differences are really quite subtle. It's the instrumentation of it all. It's the energy that you bring everything across with. And yes, there are some differences in the harmonies, and especially if we look at the verse of this, I mean, there's some really weird Phrygian stuff going on, something that you'd never find in Crazy, but in general, like at least the commercial parts of songs and the structures of songs are pretty much similar. And even here, we still have that verse, chorus, bridge, chorus type of deal with some added stuff. We're starting with the chorus, and things are a little bit different, but it's pretty much still that Hollywood structure that you know from the Addiction formula. So, let's go over the song and talk about a couple of things here. Is that Margot Robbie? She looks like Margot. I'm just mentioning it because Margot is a huge Slipknot fan. The most interesting part about this to me is the drums, because there's no snares, and snares are important for a backbeat, and backbeats are important for people to do this, right? For people to nod their heads along, to be really clear for the audience, like, hey, this is where the backbeat is. This is, this is the 1 of the measure. Like, it makes it easier to figure out for people where they're supposed to nod their heads and where the 1 is. Here, what they're doing is they just basically have a 16th note pattern on the floor tom with some other toms thrown in, but there's no snare. So it's kind of disorienting, and it's a little bit more difficult to place those backbeats and the 1 of the measure. Now, structurally, this also makes sense because the song opens up essentially with this chorus, but they're not giving us the entire chorus just yet. They're not giving us the full banger type chorus that we get later on where we have a clear backbeat. They're giving us a thinned out version of it where the groove isn't as clear, where it's not as easy to move along to. It's building tension and the tension is building because there isn't a clear backbeat. Also, the whole amount of notes and there not being a backbeat also contributes to the fact that it sounds more chaotic. The few accents that are being played on the toms aren't on the backbeat, so it's even more confusing. The whole thing just seems really chaotic here at this point. And that's a really good thing because in the verses, that's going to get cleared up a little bit more. So here we have an actual backing choir singing the lyrics of the song, and you can hear that this was surely recorded because they're singing lyrics. And while there are some sample libraries that can emulate lyrics, it still doesn't sound as good. I'm pretty sure that this was actually recorded. Now, something I didn't mention actually about last week's episode about Crazy was, because they used samples for their choirs, you can really hear that they wrote it on a computer and not on a MIDI keyboard. So last week I said, yeah, they probably wrote it on the MIDI keyboard. But think twice, that's my only advice. I'm pretty sure they didn't, because the voicings that they're using and the voice leading doesn't really make sense. Like there's a lot of jumps. So if you were to play that on the piano, it would be a lot of a lot of hopping around. Whereas a piano player usually tries to, stay as close together with their voicings as possible. So they're just moving individual notes instead of moving the whole thing up or down. That was just an interesting side note. Anyways, moving on with Unsainted. Now we're moving into the verse, or into that riff here, and here we have a very clear backbeat where the whole band essentially plays, super simple, just right on the heavy counts of the music, super, super simple. And if you listen to the guitars here, the guitars kind of play off of that, right? So we have the really heavy rhythm section, which is just focusing on the heavy downbeats, and the guitar is playing a lot of playing on the offbeats. And so there's a nice little contrast there, almost a counterpoint between the rhythm section and the guitar, where they're kind of moving against each other. And that's, I think, what creates a lot of the bounce of this. Otherwise, it would just seem really flat and really heavy, and the guitarist is bringing in the lightness, the bounciness of it all. And this is such a typical fill for Slipknot as well, because it's really long. It's not just like the last two beats of the bar, but it's like, it goes on forever. And there's tons of note, and it's just very quick, very hectic, very chaotic, and it's very much up front of the mix. So the kick drum and the snare in their mixes are often, super punchy and super up front. And it's really hard to ignore them, which makes the song even more chaotic because they're playing so many, of those double bass patterns. So there's, it's a very, very hectic sound here. So here we have Corey coming in with his vocals. And so if you're using shouting for your vocals, you're pretty much limited to two factors. One is energy, the amount of energy you put in, like, how much pressure are you going to put in? And the other part is the rhythm that you use. And so for him, in a lot of his songs, it's just like, it's a lot of 16th notes. It's very predictable in that way, actually. But what he's doing is he's like, it just has a lot of drive. If he was singing longer notes, it wouldn't have that same drive, and also not the same amount of chaos that he can add by adding all of those notes. So that's why he's doing that, I think. And it also makes it even harder to sing along to, because there's not some really clear melodic lines that we can hook onto. It's just a whole bunch of text, and it's really difficult to remember all of that, So that has another It's those subversive undertones, I think, that a lot of people like about Slipknot, that makes the band less approachable and more aggressive, you know? So now the drummer is building here by going like gitu, 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 right? So we're moving on to the next energy level by adding even more snares into there. And snares, you know, the amount of snares you put into your sections, that really is a big factor in how high the hype of the section is. This is a cool moment as well here before the chorus where we have just the drums playing and the rest of the music drops out so that the chorus can come in even harder. This is something that I often do myself, like especially in rock songs. I do that tons, like right before the chorus, drop everything out so that when the music comes back in, it has that much more push. Huge contrast here in the chorus, right? First of all, we have some actual chords. Before that, it was just mainly, you know, stuff around the one and with some Phrygian stuff thrown in there. Now we're moving to a minor key, and it's much more harmonic. So we're actually using chords, you know, one chord per bar, even though we're moving to a 2 diminished here, which, you know, adds a little bit more of that diminished, chaotic, dark sound that Slipknot is known for. But the chord progression is much more harmonic. The melody is now sung. So instead of having that really rough, rhythmical kind of singing, we have something more melodic. There's long notes starting on the one, so a strong movement here. But it's long notes. It's a very melodic chorus. And that's really great because it gives us a lot of contrast to the very hectic, rhythmical, non-melodic verses. One more thing that I think is really interesting about Slipknot is how much their drummer is actually doing. Like, this is a drummer's paradise, you know? In most rock bands, you would probably tell them to chill, dude, right? Everyone else has their right to play some stuff as well, you know? But with Slipknot, it seems to be a part of the image, because the more notes he gets to play, the more chaotic the whole thing sounds, and the better that fits their image, you know? So it's become a thing in their band. So, which just goes to show, again, that in songwriting, you can truly do anything as long as it makes sense, as long as you're thinking about it, as long as it makes sense with your message or your image. And so we're ending the chorus with a little transition here. And then we go back into the verse, right? So that's a nice little way of adding some more stuff into the song. That, again, makes it seem more chaotic because there's more stuff going on. They're just throwing stuff at you at all times. The rhythm of this is, again, different than what we've heard in the verse. There's, you know, a lot of focus on individual hits, and it's not backbeat oriented. It's just like all over the place. Again, just driving the point home that this is chaos. Something else about this verse is that on the backbeats here, one of the percussionists is also playing something. Sounds like, you know, the trash can that they used in Duality, where they with the baseball bat against the trash can. So you get this ting sound of the snare. I gotta admit, the first time I saw Slipknot, I was like, this is ridiculous. Nobody needs 9 people in their band, and nobody needs 3 percussionists. It's ridiculous. And it is, for sure. It is ridiculous. But it has a couple of effects on me. What I think is really interesting is when you see that many people on stage, it creates a certain energy. You know, a lot of people say, like, I'm not even the biggest fan, but their live show is just absolutely amazing. It's just incredible to see how much energy they have. And it's true. And I think a big reason for that is that they have so many people on stage that you never get tired of the band. You always have something to look at. There's always, you know, the masks are really interesting. So you have, like, your imagination starts running wild what that could mean, because everyone's mask has a different kind of flavor. You know, one seems to come from Hellboy. The religious stuff, you know, there's all these associations you have. So you never get bored when you watch this band live, and there's an incredible energy that they have. have as well. So that's the visual aspect of it, but also musically, just adding that little percussion element in there. And in this song, it's featured fairly lightly, I would say, but in other songs, you know, the percussionists play like a lot more notes. And that is really the Slipknot sound. If you take that away from them, if you took out all those percussive elements, which just basically just play a lot of like doom, 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 that kind of stuff. If you took that away from their sound, and if you just had the drum set, which is already super busy, it wouldn't be Slipknot for some reason. You know, it's a big part of their sound. It's like the slap bass of Korn is its major sound. Unique selling point, so to say, and that's the same here with Slipknot with their percussion. And oh yeah, there's a DJ as well. So here we have a kind of halftime groove where everything is just really slows down before we move into the really hectic stuff at the end. And here you can really hear those big fat orchestral concert drums play a huge part in that, I think. Like it sounds heavier, it sounds more epic by using these orchestral drums, don't you think? So now we're moving to standard time, so the snare is now on 2 and 4. But the heavy feel of the previous section kind of remains. So the drums kind of are moving up a notch while the rest of the music stays kind of slow. We're adding another harmony with the guitars, so we're slowly moving up the ladder of energy, pushing further and further until, you know, we get to the finale here.
I was told that you wanted more, but you didn't want me.
Also check out this video. I mean, all those colors, like the primary colors, especially red, and then we have that RGB slanted against one another, which creates these really interesting effects. There's some parts which are just really grainy, where you get a lot of that VHS kind of look. The video is just full of dirt, and I really like that. We have the proper film look sometimes it's just flashy images. So there's a lot of stuff going on that obviously moves with the music, but more importantly, I think it feels jolted together from different things, and again, it's contributing to the chaos, to the bestiality, of the beastliness is probably the better word to use here, of the whole thing.
You've killed the saints in me. How dare you honor me?
Now there's even more build-up here because the drums are playing this sort of blast beat, you know, I can't even do it that fast with my mouth. Unbelievable. So now the energy of the song rises even further, and there's a lot of tension here. So the drums are essentially playing a drum fill, you know, that, but then just with one hand, and the other hand is playing on the ride. Building, getting louder and louder and louder. So to end up in the chorus, so we have that huge buildup of tension before the chorus, and then all that's going to release in just a second.
You've killed the saints in me.
And also here we have a very prominent line, but it is presented in a really fantastic way because the music is dropping out, even the drums. For the first time, we have no other instrument, and it gives Corey the chance to deliver his line, "You killed the saint in me," which is kind of the whole tagline of the whole song. In that silence, it also has that additional effect of having the silence right before we go back into the chorus, which again creates contrast. So it serves two purposes, really. The contrast and the silence, so Corey can deliver his most important line of the song. And listen to that kick drum, man. It's just everywhere. It doesn't seem to follow a specific pattern. It's just, you know, it's just mental. It's just all over the place. And again, why is that? You guessed it, chaos. Some more scratching. So it ends on this really high, screechy note, and on the tagline, "How dare you murder me?" You know, and then we get to see him look him right in the eye. So there you go. Actually, I think the whole percussion, you know, all those big kettle drums, I think they're probably more prominent in the song than I thought at first. I think they're probably all over the entire song. It's just a little bit more difficult to hear them. Like the mixing this time around seems to be a little bit different. Like in previous Slipknot records, those were definitely higher in the mix, so it was definitely easier to hear them. Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. I wonder if the rest of the album is going to be like that as well. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, folks. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like and subscribe. Leave a comment in the comment section below to let me know which artist you'd like me to do next. And if you'd like to ask me questions every single week or send me songs, you can do that on Patreon. Just check out the description of this video. Thanks so much for watching. Take care and stay gefährlich.